Um, well, thank you for coming to the second workshop in the series of the workshops that we have. As you know, this is also streamed online, so we have us and there's people watching us online. Before we start, I'll just give a very brief, I mean, most of you are familiar with us, the company, but even for some people are new actually, and some for people online. So I'll just give a brief about our company, what we do, and then about the workshops, and specifically this workshop, what do we expect from. And before we start, if anyone is, I see maybe all of you. So the laptops, you have the internet connection there. I think I sent an email in the morning with the files. So if you've downloaded the files or do you copy it? Yeah, but anyways, if that is the case, I will send you also a link to download the training files if you want, but I'm not sure you need that. So with that said, as you know, us as a company, BIM Engineering Solutions, we are dedicated to BIM. We're also the distributors of ArchiCAD in the region. We do services and training and software, and we are based in basically 3 offices, which is 1 here in Dubai and 2 in Egypt, and we work with resellers in the region. With services, we basically work with developers, with contractors, and we do projects. These are some of the projects that we worked on as BIM service providers. That includes usually, and mostly in ArchiCAD, that we do architecture, structure, MEP, and ArchiCAD proves every time that it's really good for larger projects because it doesn't affect the speed. We can still manage these projects that you're seeing in maybe one file that we can run on a normal computer. So that is also one of the most powerful things about ArchiCAD. This is another example of a mall. You see structure, MEP, and architecture. I like usually to show this example because it shows, because many people think ArchiCAD is, you can just manage to do architecture and structure, but you can actually do everything with ArchiCAD. So that's an example of a large project with, MEP and so on. Before we start, I just want to let you know that you can download, if you want to try ArchiCAD, you can download the trial version, 30 days from myarchicad.com. And if you're a student or a teacher or in school, you can get it for free. And if you have inquiries about commercial licenses, what type of licenses and prices and so on, just head to BIMES.com/buy. Regarding the workshops, so far, this is the second one. This is a series that we're planning. This is the second one. The first one was about ArchiCAD 22 new features. This one is about advanced modeling. We'll talk about it in a second. The remaining ones, the planned ones, are one that is dedicated to presentation, where we will cover presentation options in ArchiCAD, and that goes from creating, colorful plans with shadows, sections, and so on, creating different views, rendering tips with Cinema 4D, and we will also introduce Twin Motion there, which is an amazing rendering tool that works perfectly with ArchiCAD. And also we'll focus on BIMEX that we think is a great tool and it's part of the setup and you can actually utilize it in your daily workflow. Another workshop will be about advanced documentation that will focus basically on the boring side usually of the job, which is creating documents. But with that, we will try actually to make it less mundane. Yeah, okay. So we will focus on automation, parts of it, how we can automate parts of it, how we can get our sheets ready, and all of these aspects that will help us actually making that job a bit easier as the documentation part. There will be another workshop about coordination and working with other BIM platforms. So in case you're working with other consultants using other BIM platforms, doesn't matter what is it. Is it Tekla? Is it Revit? Is it Ecosim? It doesn't matter. We'll talk about how we can exchange format and even actually non-BIM formats. So things like SketchUp or DWGs. We'll talk about coordination in general, how we can coordinate, what are the things that we expect to do, don't expect to work out, and so on. We will also introduce a quality control tool for your models, Solibri Model Checker, which is a great tool to review your models, to even check design rules if you want. And then we will have a workshop about advanced scheduling, and that will concern or will be mainly focused about creating schedules in ArchiCAD and getting different kind of information and linking it with maybe spreadsheets, filling information, bringing it back. We will also talk about expressions, which is the new in 22, what examples we can use there. And yeah, that's pretty much it actually. There may be also utilizing graphical override to actually convert this schedules into a visual feedback on your models, on your drawings, and so on. And the last planned workshop is about creating and maintaining templates to help offices to get things a bit, again, more streamlined, that you get things ready for you, and so on. So about today's topic, mainly these are the things that we're going to cover. We talk about very basic things and some tips about using stuff. What I wanted to highlight before we start, it is I mean, today's workshop is a collection of small tips. So you might be familiar with some of them. Hopefully you will get introduced to some others. So you might find parts that, you know, are redundant and you know it, but hopefully everyone will be able to get something new out of this. And also, I mean, while we're going, because they're pretty much different topics, so jumping between topics, I will stop, I think, by the end of each topic. And if you have questions, we'll answer it, because, I mean, we might not come across it again because they're very fragmented bits. But it's basically things that I noticed most of the clients usually ask. So I tried to put it all together here. Last bit, that if you are on any of the social media platforms, I know we're not that great to get the same names on all the platforms, but you can still just find us on whatever you use. We post not only, I mean, advertising stuff. We actually post also tips about using the program. So it's good if you're on any of those. Maybe just have a look at it. So I'll switch actually to ArchiCAD, and I'll start with some basic stuff. Again, I expect that, you know, you're all actually using ArchiCAD. So although it's basic, but I expect that basics of ArchiCAD are covered, I guess. So the first thing that I see many users face a lot is actually working with walls. Although it's, you know, it's the basic thing, walls, intersections, having different intersections, and so on. So to start with the very, very basics of how walls work, if I have, and by the way, if you want to follow on your laptops, that is the first file. It's called 01 Advanced Modeling. You can open it and you can find it. That's up to you. So when we draw any wall, you see always there's this thick line, right? That's the reference line. And this line is actually how ArchiCAD connects walls to each other. So based on them intersecting, that's how it cleans up, and so on. When we're drawing, one thing I find helpful, using the P letter on your keyboard, and mirrors the wall around that reference line. So when you're drawing, if you want a quick mirror, you can just hit P, and that rotates it. Another thing, when we're drawing it, you notice, for example, in this case, we're using maybe a composite, a basic composite, but we can select where this reference line is located. So in this case, let's say it is core outside. So you can see actually when I draw it, or I drew this already, that you can see that the reference line is actually at the outside surface of the core. But let's say if I draw another one, and in this case, I would say center. So the center of the whole wall. Yeah, so it's actually drawing that at the center, or, you know, the inside face. So I can draw one inside face. And you see, after I draw them, they're all actually, they still have their reference line very clear, and that's how it interacts, and so on. So if we look at this, for example, we can see the reason this is not cleaning up is they're not basically connected. Yeah. So let's say if I drag a copy of this, let's say a copy here, and let's say if I drag this here, you'll see that it cleans up. Now, one thing that is helpful, if you want to look at them always, you can just use this. You can just go to View, On-Screen Options, and you can turn them on. So you can turn the wall and beams reference lines. So you'll be able to see them and understand what's happening. These lines will not be printed. It's just on your screen. Yeah, so it helps understand. One thing about editing also, before we carry on with the other parts of the walls, but you can actually, so let's say if I have a wall, let's say it's a curved wall, doesn't matter now what where the reference line is located, but let's say we have different walls. So let's say that's one, it's another one, you know, whatever. One thing when you're editing is helpful. If you hold Command or Control on Windows, you can start trimming the walls. So if you want to trim, just hold Control, you'll have this icon and just click. And then if you want to adjust walls, also a good command that, for example, I can select, I can select these walls, and I have a command here that says adjust. Yeah, and clicking on that, and then if I select, let's say, the reference line, they all are adjusted to the reference line. So if it's shorter, it gets extended. If it's longer, it gets shorter, and so on. And they're cleaned up, but because you're seeing the reference line, I think it is not, but they're cleaned up. Yeah, so you can do that. So adjust command is also good. The other thing about walls, so let's say I've placed this already. Let's delete this. Let's say we've placed these walls, and they're all located at the core outside. Now, if I don't want this line to be here anymore, I want it to be on this edge. So let's say if I change actually the reference line location, what will happen is actually, notice now, if I change that, basically the reference line will stay in the same position, but the wall is moved. Now, what if I don't want that? I want to keep the wall in its position and just shift the reference line. For that, we have in Edit, you have something called Reference Line and Plane, and there is Modify Wall Reference Line. If I click on this, it will give me options to edit that, basically keeping the wall in place, or walls in this case. So for example, here, if I say, well, I want the reference line to be in the center, or the inside face, or core, or whatever. So let's say center, you would notice that actually the lines shift. So it's not the wall is in the same position, it's just the reference line shift. And that is helpful when you're editing. So if you're editing, you have zones linked to it, and you want to edit without moving it, you can use this. Another thing about intersections, so let's say you see these three walls, they're intersecting at the same point, and you notice that maybe this is not the intersection that you want. You know, you want priority for this intersection over the three. You can control that. So for example, if I select these two and I go to settings, you will find under model, there's a junction order. The higher the order, the higher priority of the connection is. So for example, if these two, and I change the order, let's say to 10, you'll see that actually now the connection is changed as giving this intersection a priority. Or if I select these two and the same, so these will have a priority over the connection. So you can do this. Another small thing about walls, let's pick another wall type. Let's say this. So, you know, a wall with plaster or something. And in some cases, I hope you know that if we're placing a window or a door, we can make these wrap up. We can control the plasters. This is more of the documentation workshop. I'll show it more maybe in documentation. But I mean, if we have windows, we can control actually what elements to be wrapped, how the wall behavior. But usually, I find users get a bit confused when we don't have anything. So we want it to end here, but we want the plaster to wrap or something. There's a tool called Wall End Tool. You can just select it, and the default. So for example, if I select this, the wrapped end, and if I just click it here, it will provide me, and you have options of, you know, the thickness of it and so on, and you can control it. And this tool is not only for wrapping this, you can really do a lot of it with it. So let's say if I draw another wall that has more like a composite, smaller skins, let's say, and if I use the wall end tool and I use the returned end, And here I can actually control, let's say, how many skins to turn. So I just want 2. Let's say you can look at it here. So just 2 turns and so on. So we can actually control a lot of it. So it's helpful, also a tool when it comes to walls, let's say. Another thing that we face quite often is when we have hidden elements, but they're still affecting the plan. So this could be if we're doing options, if we're doing structural and architecture. So as an example, we have here 2 design options. So this is one, the small one, and then the second one is the the large one. And I placed them in different layers. So I have option 1, option 2. Now the issue happens is if I hide, let's say option 2, or actually let's hide option 1. If I hide option 1, so it is hidden, but you can see that still the walls are intersecting and so on. Now, this might get a bit frustrating, and especially if you're creating a structural set. So we have structural walls and second architecture walls, and then we hide the architecture, and then we find that the walls are cut by a third or something. We can control this within the layers. So you know that layers could be controlled. We can lock, hide, and turn as a wireframe. But also the layer has a priority. This little number next to it is a layer priority. Now the main point is that if I have 2 walls, different layers, as long as the number is the same, they will intersect. Once the numbers are different, they will not intersect with each other anymore. They will not interact with each other anymore. So in this case, for example, let's say if I change for the hidden elements, so these walls, the hidden ones that I don't see, if I change the number of priority, so you'll see it's updated, they're not intersecting. Now this is helpful if you have, let's say you're using molding on the wall or cornice, or you use a different wall and you don't want it to intersect with walls, you can use it. But the problem is you might want them to interact in other views. So the structure and architecture, you want them to be interacting actually in your architecture drawings, but not on the structure, let's say. And that is the cool thing about this, that these numbers could be saved as part of your layer combination, exactly like how you save the status of a layer hidden or locked or so on. So for example, I have 2 layer combinations here. So in this one, you can see that the number for option 2 is 2, and this is 1, and 1 is hidden and 1 is shown, while the other one flips it. So these are changing with the layer combination. So I can basically just go and select option 1, and then select option 2, let's say, and that works without any issues. Another similar way of managing things, but that's more focused on renovation, but you can also use it for design options, that in ArchiCAD, by default, every element, when you open it under the, the renovation in classification, it has a status. So it's either existing or to be demolished or new. You can also view them. You can open, there's a dedicated palette. You can open renovation here. So, I can select any element and say, this is existing, this is to be demolished, for example. Now, based on the status of the elements, we can use the renovation filters here. Yeah. So this is what I'm looking at is the existing plan, which is usually existing elements and elements to be demolished. Yeah. But then, for example, if I go to demolition plan, it will highlight the elements that are going to be demolished in a different color. You can see them. And then let's say if I switch to after demolition, so basically the elements will be gone, the demolished elements. And then let's say we go to new construction, which will highlight basically all the activities, the new elements and the demolished elements. And then we can just go to planned status, which is basically the end game. So you can see, so basically I can switch between what is existing and what is planned, and that doesn't interfere with your layer setup or something. It's just a status of an element, yeah, that you can. And you can customize this, so you can create other combinations if you have, which is, again, anything that you want to edit, just click next to it, and then you have options. So if you have a situation where you just want to show the demolished element, let's say, you can create a new one and hide, control this here. Yeah, so it's also a good, I think it's a good example to use this tool. That's pretty much it about the walls, I guess. So I'll move to another topic. So if you have any questions regarding this, No, we're good. Editing reference line.
It's also there in.
Ah, you mean if we want to move the reference? Yeah, it's an edit reference line, and you have modify wall reference line. Yeah, and one thing to note is that actually ArchiCAD understands the elements, right? So it understands what is core and what is finished. So when we are selecting, we can select that the reference line is just at the face of the core or face of the finished or so on. Yeah, so we can do that too. All right. The second topic that I will cover is dealing with affection plans. So we usually get the affection plans, and we have the coordinates of these points, and usually we draw them. So I'll show you a couple of ways of doing that, and maybe more automated way, let's say. But usually what I would do is, and how, because we are facing two issues. First of all, drawing it, and then that we want it to be in the zero of the project. We don't want it to be at those very far coordinates. So we'll see how we deal with this. So I'll start actually here, and let's say, so say we have these points. So I took actually the points from here. I just wrote them here so I can see them. And as another example, so say these are the same points, but we can start by typing them. I would suggest that we start with something basic like using hotspot. So you can use hotspot tool. The good thing is about hotspot that it's visible no matter how you zoom in or out, so you can always see it. So we can start by typing these information in. So basically, I'm not moving anywhere. I'm just hitting X and start entering the east value. So let's say for the first point, it's 487246.985. And then for Y, which you can hit Y or tab, that is 277.1691.314. And then once I'm done, I just hit enter. And that point will be, we can check it. So if I want to see that zoom to fit, let's say, you can see it's very, very far, but that's fine. We will deal with that later. So that's the first point. Then I'll enter the second point, again, X 487291.103. I hope I don't miss something here. 277.1682.449. So that is the second point. The third point is 48. So that's an X, yeah, 487.221.294, and then 277.156.3.449, and then the last one is X 487.265.975, and obviously I'm entering these in meters, yeah, so I'm using meters, and I think that's what they're using in their coordinates also, 0.399. So hopefully I typed them all correctly, so I will have them here. So if I zoom in, you see that is what we have. Now, a good thing then to connect them, so maybe I'll use line tool and connect them as a start. And let's say we want to check that the coordinates are correct. In object, you can use an object that's called, I think it's called global coordinate dimensions. And let's say in this case, I don't want the ID, sorry, and I don't want Z because we don't have value of Z. And let's switch to a scale that makes sense. Let's say 500 or something. And I can just place them, here, and should read the values. We can double check the values here. So top left is 85314103.449. Yeah, I think they look okay. Now, lower left, yeah, they're fine. Now we need to drag them back to the origin of the file because it's not advisable that you work on something that's very, very far. I mean, it's doable, but you know, I don't think it's a good idea. So we'll see now how to drag them and how we still maintain the numbers to the coordinates. One thing, because it might get confusing to know where to drag it, I usually do this. So while I'm here, I pick the line tool, and again, I just enter X0, Y0, enter, and that will give me a line that's actually stretching from the origin to here. So it will be very easy to track. So I can just select these here, and I'll drag them. And when I'm zooming out, it's very easy to find. That's really far. Okay, very easy to find where's 0, 0. So let's say I place this here. Okay, now let's delete this line. Now the problem that you face is that now it is reading the actual coordinate because we moved them. So what we can do, let's delete. We can delete them, we can keep them, doesn't matter, but let's delete them. So let's delete those coordinates. Now we know one thing for a fact, that we moved. Sorry, I closed the file. So we know that we moved this whatever shape that we drew by this value, because this is the lower left point. So it was 4, 8, 7, whatever, and this, and we moved the whole thing by this on X axis, and this is on the Y. So basically, what we can do is we can say, well, take the readings and subtract this out of it. So it's basically, we're just telling ArchiCAD to measure whatever we have here, but consider that we moved it from that point. So what I can do here is I can select this point here, and I'll go to settings. And in the settings of this coordinate, there's an option that says custom reference point. In custom reference points, I can set a custom default, and I can type in the actual value that we moved it by. So in this case, X will be minus 4872221.294, and Y will be minus 2771563. Sorry, 63.460. So now this should read this value, and based on the amount that we shifted, we can start placing it on the other point, and it should read there. So this is the lower right point. Yeah, I think I missed some point here, but I guess you get the concept that basically it's moving the whole thing with that value, and that reads correct. So that is one way. Another way, yes.
Why would you want to move it back to 0, 0 if it's already placed with the connect?
Yeah, because actually it's an issue with all CAD software. When you place something very, very, very far from origin, you would expect some issues. So it could be elements not aligning, it could be a texture. So I wouldn't recommend that you place it there.
Because I would think if you're placing it with the correct coordinates, you can do things like global illumination and whatnot.
No, that's also, you can do this, because you can set the 0, 0 of the project to some coordinates. So in your 0, 0, you can say it's, you know, this city, this coordinates, and that is fine. So but it's not recommended from the technical point of view to have something that far from the file. The other way that actually I want to show you also is that you can, so I'll just delete this. Now you see we have these points, right? We
have to rotate it to have a 90-degree plot. So same, you can create.
No. Once you drag, you're just moving it on X and Y. It doesn't matter. The rotation has nothing to do with it, because you're rotating the whole measurement. It's the same thing.
But if you move it to the 0, 0, then you need this part to be rotated and still have the correct coordinates in order just to have a clear plot. And
no, but then you're rotating the view. You're rotating this. So basically, what you're doing is you're rotating the view, which is this. You're not rotating the plot. You don't rotate the model. You rotate the coordinate system. So that is actually what you rotate here. You can just rotate the view. You don't rotate the model. But the other thing that you can use is actually, so if you have, which I think, because for example, now when I did it, I think I mistyped a number, that's why we had a difference. So to eliminate that, maybe you could use this method. Basically, open a TXT file and enter your points one by one. So basically, X space Y and space Z. If you have Z, you can enter it also. And if you want a description to the point, you can also enter it. But I mean, not necessary, yeah? But the most important is X space Y space then Z if you have it. So you enter these points line by line, and then basically that's a normal TXT file. And then in ArchiCAD, I can just go to the option where it says place mesh from surveys data. Now this is mainly used if you have information from Total Station. They give you a file that has X, Y, and Z. You can use it, but also we can use it for these things to eliminate the idea that, oh, typing and then we mistyped something. So I can just go to this option that says place mesh from survey data, and I'll pick this TXT file. And then I select, so for example, I want to be placed in the original location, and I want to zoom to that new mesh, and that's it. That is actually created directly. Yeah, so it just reads the points, creates the mesh, and place it. That is in the very far point that we're working on. And we can use this again, coordinates. Let's say we go back to project origin, and that these are the actual points, and we do the same thing. So I actually think this is a better way than entering them manually. You just put them in a TXT file and link it. Yeah, normal TXT, normal, just open edit. Yeah, I think in Windows is what, editor or something. TXT editor, I think it's called. Yeah, you just open TXT and just, Notepad, exactly. Notepad. In Notepad, you just put X space, Y space, and then Z if you have the value. If not, just set it to 0. Next line, the next point, and so on. And that will create this polygon directly. And it's actually a mesh. I mean, this is an actual 3D element. So if you have, I mean, if we had some Z values, we would have the points are actually elevated. Yeah, so we would have the points elevated, but I mean, we did it. So that is also, I think, is a good tip. Yeah, so this is about surveys, how we place them, or plots, how we place them, how we drag them, and then we still be able to read the correct values even if they're not in that location. Yeah, we're okay? Yeah.
Yeah, you draw that coordinate in the document, and then you can attach it to a place so that the coordinate is preserved. You're not moving in, but
yeah, but then the problem is if you're adding other points. And actually, not only that, it's actually when you place other points and you want to mark them up. So you want to mark up a point that is in your design. You want it to be marked up with that value. You don't want it to be from 0, 0. So it's better actually to use this method.
Can you use this as a moving design model and bring it into the project as a model?
Yeah.
Is it affecting also creating issues?
No, it shouldn't create an issue in that file. No. But yeah. Right. So there is actually right. So if you have that, if you want to read that, that's actually done within. So if you are receiving a DWG, I think it's worth it to check. There's a blog from Asia BIM. They show you how to. I mean, I will try to find it maybe in the break and show you. But basically, they show you that within Lisp you can extract these points and then bring it in. But I don't recommend it because again, when you have a survey, well, it depends maybe on project, but you'll have so many points and you don't want that. You might want a simplified one. So that is, Okay, if that is the case, then you can do it. I mean, for one plot, yes, but usually we face this when you're, let's say, doing a planning of a, you know, a large thing. You don't want all these lines. You just want the contour line per 5 meters and so on. So that's also another. So yeah, this is about surveys. The next point. Sorry, I just noticed that I don't have my charger on. Sorry, just one second.
Coordinates still work if you added the text.
If you
Document. If you added the documents, for example, you will add another one. It will update this.
no, you need to rerun it. Is that what you're saying? So you mean you've added another point? Let's say you've created this and added another point? No, you need to rerun this. So you need to re-import it. But why would you have that? Just curious.
For example, you have, let's say, it's a mistake.
Uh,
You need to update. So instead of making
mistake you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, you need to rerun it because it just runs once and creates that. So you can, yeah.
Just an additional is what we have done because just referring to his question, we have survey 4 points and then there's additional 1 more point in the demarcation survey. So we have to add this. Normally, what we are doing is we keep the original as one file, the original location, and then we have the one that where we are working as our working file, which is moved to 00 reference. So whenever we have something that is added to the point,
You add it to the original.
The original,
Oh, okay.
and we cut and paste to the working file.
Yeah, if you're expecting, I would say, if you're expecting, I mean, I'm not sure how common that is, but if you're expecting that, yes, you get more points, maybe it is a good idea to have a file, you know, with the original
Actually,
location.
we didn't expect that. But,
Okay.
we just, when we experience that, I think this is how it will be helpful to
Right.
back up, which is original.
Right. Okay.
They will ask you sometimes for substation coordinate.
No, but that is fine. If substation is something you have designed, that is okay because once you bring it in, you can extract new points. That's okay.
From here again.
Right. So you use the same. But what she's saying is if they got her points that are not related to the design, but by a surveyor. So you're adding points to the plot. It's something that you didn't have. But your design is fine. Once you have the design, you can. Exactly, because exactly what we did. Once we added this shift to it, any point will read the actual coordinate. So you don't need to do that. Okay. So I think we'll move to the next topic, which is more. Yes. You can move, there's a user origin, you can move it, but actually the 00 of the model file will remain the same. So no, yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. Yeah, it's actually, it depends. Yeah, it depends because that I'm not 100% sure of, but I understand that these are using a datum per the country. So these are not your, I'm not sure to be honest. But if they are global coordinates, then yes, definitely, it's whatever you have on Google. But if they are a national datum, I am not sure. Are they global? Okay. So they are then the same. So they're the same actually coordinates. So you can put that in. Yeah. We will talk actually in the workshop for documentation or maybe presentation. We will talk even how to import a Google image and apply it to that surface with the right coordinates. We will cover that in the hopefully the next workshop. Okay. We will talk then now about using maybe Morph tool and some other modeling in general, modeling tasks. We will start with using Morph tool to create, let's say, something like furniture. I mean, the point is not about actually creating furniture. I just want to show you that you can do a lot with the Morph tool. That you can model freely. So I'll show you some few examples. One of them will be this. So creating this Phantom chair. So I will do that using actually Morph tool. So I had a basic section, and I had a, we will see it in a second. So I'll just pick the Morph tool here, and using Magic Wand, I will just apply it here. And let's say I'll change the material to this red color, whatever it is. Let's say this. And I will just place this here. And let's have a look at it in 3D. So I have this as a section, and I have, using Morph, also I drew a basic elevation of that chair. And we will start with that. So what I will do is, let's say I'll place it maybe 1 centimeter below. And then clicking here, I will have the options, yeah? So options, one of them is called the tube. That allows me to go on a specific path. So I'll just follow the path of, sorry? Nah, it's a line. You can draw it in elevation. That's fine. But again, I mean, mainly what I'm trying to show is just how, I mean, what options do you have with Morph? So, but I hope that is clear. Yeah, as you said, it's just something you draw in section maybe, or so on. So let's say we started with, you know, the basic shape. And one thing about morphs is if I select, now it selects the whole morph, not the sub-elements, yeah? But let's say I want to select sub-elements. You always have this white arrow that allows us to select sub-elements, or it's shift control in, actually in both in Mac or Windows. So I can select, so let's say I'll select, so I'll say the points should be entirely in. So I'll say, I'll select these points here. And let's say I'll drag these points back. So using move command or drag, let's say I will align it with, say, this point here. And let's say, again, we want to select these points here. So using the same thing, I'll just select poly selection, holding control and shift. Let's say we select these here. And let's say we move it. Looks like I've selected an additional point, so let's remove that. And again, we drag it. Let's say I have a reference point here, so I'll just put it here. And let's say again here, using the same thing, and I'm holding down the control and shift. So using that, drag it again. Let's say we align it here, and we'll do maybe the same to enhance it a little bit here, or actually the top one. So basically what I'm trying to share here is that you can work with these sub-elements, which gives us quite freedom when we're working, and gives us different results. So I'm not really very accurate on this. I'm just creating it, you know, just as an example. So it's okay. Yeah. So something like this. And then maybe the last selection is these points here. And I'm always keeping shift and control pressed, because I just want these sub-elements to be selected. So let's say something like this. And let's also, you can select surfaces. So in this case, let's say I'll select this surface here. I would select this surface here, and then push them or drag them a little bit. And let's also select these. I think it's a bit thick, so let's select this side or these edges, and also these. So always holding shift and control allows me to select only surfaces, not the whole thing. So let's say we select these, and let's push it up a bit. So let's say we make it a bit thinner. Another thing that we can do, which I think is also cool, that let's say if I select this whole row here, sorry. So selecting this, also the morph allows us to go with this option. So if I click, there is something called the box, I think it's called box stretch, and this allows to work with these elements as one box. So if I want to push, and I want to push from both sides, let's say I want this to be, narrower here. So both of them, they go narrow. So that's one. And let's switch maybe to axonometric view so I can see it from the side easily. So let's say here, we also select this option. And again, we select all these points. Looks like we missed some, so let's do it again. Yeah, and again, selecting the box stretch method, and I can just push it from both sides. Let's say up to here. And then maybe finally these points. And again, we can push it, let's say, from both sides. And maybe, let's say, once we're done, we still have, let's say, this edge that I want to adjust. I can just select this edge and pull it back if I want. I mean, I'm not going to be very accurate with it. I just want to, so we can maybe just drag this back a little bit. Let's say, yeah. I mean, you can still clean it up, but let's say, so we start with this. And then what I can do is I can select the whole morph. And within design options, there is modify morph, and I can smooth that shape. So I can just go to smooth, and let's say smooth boundaries, and or keep boundaries, doesn't matter actually, it's smooth. And here you can control how smooth it is. Obviously, more it will have more polygons, which is the thing that we'll talk about in a second. But then you will have this as a shape, which is good as a shape for an object, as a chair. And now we will see how we save it as an object and how we detail that. Because one cool thing again about ArchiCAD is, so we have this. Let's say I'll drag a copy of it. That ArchiCAD, so we will see how we create an object actually first. So let's say we have this. I'll open it in 3D. And basically, I just have to select it and then go to File. And then I go to Save Selection. And I'll save it as an object. Yeah, so I'll just save that as an object. Okay, and we will call it AC Phantom, let's say. Now, this is saved as an object. If you want more details, you can specify what kind of object and so on, but that's fine. We'll just go with the basic saving. So we'll save an object. Now, the problem with saving an object that, for example, you might not be happy. So now it's in my object library, so I click it. See, that's what I get, and maybe this is not the symbol that I want for that object. And that doesn't matter if you create an ArchiCAD, if you're importing it, as I'll show you, we can edit these things. So to edit this, basically I've selected this object, and then in File, I think under Libraries and Object, there is an option to open object. So if I open that object, it will open the dialog actually of the object. So we're not going into the script or something. What we're going to focus at is the 2D symbol. So there is an option where you click on 2D symbol, and actually it will open the 2D symbol for us. And in this, we can actually start. So if I want it to be simplified, I don't want it to be exactly a projection. So I wanted to simplify it, so I can start actually drawing something here. Let's say we just highlight the outside box of it. So we start with that, yeah. And then let's say I know that I want this to be up to here, let's say. Maybe I'll delete this and mirror. So this is pure 2D work, yeah? So we're working on it as if it's a 2D element. And then I can start adjusting it. So I want this line to be curved here. I want these to be curved here, same as here. And then maybe I want these to have some sort of curve. And the same here. Sorry. And then maybe this line also curved a little bit. And then I want to delete the old ones. I use a different pen assignment, so it's very easy to select them. So I can just say all types using. So I'll select those, the old ones, and you see it has so many polygons or so many dots. So maybe you don't want that, and maybe I just want to add I don't know, a symbolic line here that just shows the curve. So let's say this. And maybe I will add also a hatch. So we were able to select it like, you know, the normal object. So I'll just select a cover hatch and let's say background fill, and then I'll just like that. The other thing that also may be worth mentioning that when I select, you see there is only 4 points to select it. So if I want more, I can go to, again, editing and using hotspots. I can put any point that I want it to be considered. So let's say I want these points. I don't know. I think I'm overdoing it, but just to show what options do we have. So let's say these, you know, these points. And so that's it. I'll just close this. One more thing, maybe you want to add also a preview picture. Yeah, so there's a preview picture. So I can click on preview picture. By default, there is nothing. If you want, I can, let's say I can open, let's say I open this image here, copy. So I highlighted the part, copy and paste. So that will be part of my object. So now if I close the object, it'll ask me to save it and say yes, save it. And now I have a cool object to use that has an image and has these points and so on. So that is if we have created it in ArchiCAD. Now, yes, sir.
If I may add one thing, you should place your node of the object as close to 000 as possible.
That's true. Actually, yeah.
And if possible,
Okay. I'm not sure about the pen, but I know in Z value, definitely it should be at 0. Okay. So, well, that's something to consider. So now we have this object. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about here is importing from other formats. So actually, ArchiCAD is really, really good with importing these. So we will see the same object from different formats, actually, that I have downloaded online. So we will start, sorry. I have them in this folder. We will start with the SketchUp. So I download this, I think, from Warehouse, Google Warehouse. So with SketchUp, it's very easy. You can just drag and drop. And it will create a GDL object. And yeah, remember one thing, that the objects that we import, we can also edit their symbols. So if you're not happy with the 2D symbol, we do the same thing that we did, or change the image or something. So that is actually the object from SketchUp. Sorry. Okay, so that is one from SketchUp. Let's see one that is where is it? RFA. So from Revit library, you can also do that. You need to install, I'll mention those in a second, but you can import an RFA as GDL object. So I'll just pick that and open it. And again, here you can control how smooth the geometry is. So I'll keep it at the middle. And that will again convert it to an object. And you see that it takes time, like, I don't know, a few seconds. But once it's saved, it's a GDL object. So it doesn't matter what was the source. So once it's saved, it's saved. And then after that, so here it says it's saved, and it is part of the library, so I can just place it. So here you go. And then the last one we will try today is a 3ds file. And I found those online, by the way. It's not something that I created or something. You can just go to, sorry, for 3D Studio, you can import 3ds as GDL object. And you can import also DWG if you have a block. You can import from, what do you call it? From Rhino also, you can. So let's say as it is from 3ds. But I didn't check the scale, so let's just double check the scale of this file. Okay, it's saved. Oh yeah, it's massive, so let's just make it 45 centimeters. So now we have actually chairs, same chair, from different formats, and you can look at it. I really like this one; looks cool. But yeah, so you import them. You can change, as we said, you can enhance their 2D symbol if you want, because in many cases you import something, you're not happy with the 2D symbol, you want it simplified or something. Now, an important thing to consider when you're working on this is the number of polygons in these objects. Yeah, because the moment you go on a project and you start having it heavy or something, always check the polygon. So we will talk about this now. So basically, I will select these, and I want to understand poly count basically is just how many surfaces is in this item, this object, or so on. And there's a tool for that. It's poly count. I'll show you in a minute how to download it. But so once we start it, let's say we don't want the whole entire project. I just want it for the selection. So I just want to compare these 4 objects. So I'll just refresh it. So here it says, based on the selection, 100% of them are objects. We'll see that in a second. But it shows, sorry. So it shows here by polygons. So this is the RFA one, the one that we've imported. So it's this one, the one that we imported from Revit. It has 23,000 polygons. It's quite high. The one that we have created is 8,000. And then the 3ds is 3,000, and then the SketchUp one is, yeah, they're almost the same. So here you can see it's a huge difference between them. So you should consider this also, because in many cases, so let's actually run it for the whole project. And this has, I mean, the file has a project in it. So I'll just show you the project first. It's a, demo project. Yeah, ignore this for a second. I think we have something. We still have something very far, huh? Okay, so basically the project is this, so let's just focus on it. So So this is the project, and we will run now the poly count for the entire project just to see, because it's very common. So I'll just refresh this. It's very common that we're working on project and things start to feel really heavy, and it's not the project. It might be a tree that we used or a car that we used, and it has so many polygons, but we don't notice it. And usually those are not the standard library parts. The standard library parts are very reasonable, but something we have imported. So you might consider that. Now, just to show you how to install, because by default, poly count is not installed. So just to show you how to download these, if you go to help and then go to ArchiCAD downloads, it will open the ArchiCAD downloads page. So if you go to add-ons, and you'll find quite a few. So there's the goodies, the Rhino connection, MEP Modeler Cinema 4D, Google Earth connection. We want the goodies. So if I click on it, and in this case, we're using international version. You have a list of it here, so you can read about them. So for example, for importing 3ds, also by default, it's not. So here you can read about it, how to import, what settings you can control. And we were talking about, what was it? Polycount. So again, if you click on it, it explains how to install it, where to find it, how it works, and so on. And this is a free add-on, so I would encourage you definitely to download it. Let's see if it's finished. Almost finished. Once we're done with this, we will have questions, and then we'll have a break for 10-15 minutes, and then we come back for the second part. So this might take a minute, I mean, to calculate, because it calculates every surface in the project, so you have to give it a try. But I think it's very, very good for the performance when you're working. Really taking its time. Huh? It shouldn't take longer than this. Just give it like 1 minute if it's yeah. So we're good. So now that actually shows the breakdown of the polygons of the project. Yeah. So you can see that all the walls are just 5.3% of the poly count. The total poly count is here, so it is almost 600,000 polygons. Windows are one, and then you check objects, for example. You see objects, and you see there's one object that there's 8 copies of it, and it's almost 26%. Now we can find this object. So in cases, because sometimes the select doesn't work based on the name, so you can use find and select, because I can see the name here. So I can just go to object, and then maybe add the name. So library part name contains what is the word? So there's 8, they're selected, and it's basically these. See, these silly things in this project are actually 26%. Now, definitely you don't want something that is, insignificant to your design to have 25%. So you might look at having it less smooth, or you work on that. But that is very, very good way to check. Now, the other thing is, that's the last thing I promised before the break, is that by default, the objects will have a detail level. So the standard objects from the library, they have a detail level, which is also a little bit changed in 21, but let me show you how it works. So basically in ArchiCAD, in 22, sorry, I mean, that all the objects, so let's say if I go to basic library, furnishing, let's say we go to chairs, let's say. So we pick a chair here, yeah? So if you go to 3D levels, you will have an option that is by model view options, which I'll show you now. That's actually the new one. And then you have, let's look at it here. You have full, you have simplified. You see how simplified is, less curves, it's straightforward. And then you have schematic, which is very, very basic. And then you can turn it off, yeah? Or you can set it by model view option. And that is new in 22, that actually within the model view options, you can set the level of details of it. So maybe you have a large building, and in a huge section, you don't want the furniture to be detailed. So for that section, you can set a model view option where things are simplified, or schematic even. But then you have maybe you're doing an interior design of a room, and you want them to be full. So you can set this as code. So it's the same object behaving differently in different model view options. Yeah. So you can also control this. I think that's it before the break. If you have any questions before we have a yes.
The one which you used for the chair, it was in the same plane in elevation. You see, the profile was in the same plane. What if we have it in a 3D?
I didn't get, sorry.
The profile that you used to make the chair was in the same elevation and plane, right?
Uh-huh.
It was in one plane.
Right.
For example, if we have the profile in a 3D plane, can we use that to produce our MEP sections? For example, we have an MEP file and a plumbing file. We use that profile.
But you use MEP actually. I mean, the MEP tools has this.
But that would be faster, isn't it? If we have a single line,
No.
every single line, and we connect it to a profile.
No.
Generate it faster.
No. But to answer your question, yes, because that is not related to one plane. You can move the lines in. And we will do a bit of it actually after this. Or do you want to? I still actually have like another maybe 10 minutes to show related to profile. Do you want to break, or should we do it and then we have a long a break? I don't know. Which one do you want? By hands, break now or after 5-10 minutes? Break now. So everyone is fine with the 5 minutes. Okay, so let's show. Then maybe I can cover this. Because you can do these things. So the next point that I'll show you is again mostly working with morphs. One of the things is that in morphs we can start drawing, let's say, by lines. So let's say I'll place something basic like a line here, and I'll drag a couple of copies. Yeah, let's say this, and then let's say I'll select these. I'll go to 3D, and using these lines, I can start editing them. So I'll just make basic arcs, let's say, and you know, actually we can do whatever we want. But let's say, so I'll make another arc. I will make it. Maybe I'll drag this point here a little bit. I want to have that. Let's finish the last one, and then we adjust it maybe together. So let's say this also. And when we're working here, you can switch the planes. That's actually a good thing. So for example, if I want to work on the horizontal, I can go horizontal. If I want vertical, or if I want to align it to a specific plane, I can. And let's say I will push this in a little bit, push this in. And maybe let's say we want to rotate this. So I can select this and select rotate. And let's say we go vertical. So let's say we want to rotate this a bit. So I think that shows that it's not one direction. And let's say we have these, and let's maybe go back to the plan, and let's try to connect them also with other morph lines. So let's say simple one here, maybe you know, we break it here, maybe a curve. It really doesn't matter. You can do any shape, but I'm just trying to do something very quickly. And let's say, yeah, let's say this here, and then finally this here. Yeah, so let's say we do this. Let's check in 3D that they're actually connected. So here it is not. So I can select this point and just you know, drag it up here. Same with this. Or I don't know, if I want this curve also to be, let's say, curved down, so I can just go. Yeah, so whatever I want to. Now, the cool thing is I can start selecting them. So I can start selecting these, let's say, and right click, there's a Boolean operation, and then I use union. Yeah, so it will become like a one element. And then in design, in modify morph, there is an option that's cover with faces. So it will cover that with whatever we want. Yeah, and then the same. Let's say I'll carry on with this. So I'll select this. You know, these here again, union, select it, design, cover with faces, and so on. So you can, I mean, you can see that you can actually do quite a lot with this, yeah. And once that is created, so again, design, modify, morph, cover with surfaces. Once that is created, you can convert it to one big morph. So I can just go and union this. So it's one that you can do whatever you want to it as a morph. So I can just do some, crazy irrelevant. And you can control how smooth that is. If you remember, we showed how we smooth it up and so on. And once you have this, you can use solid element operations with other elements. So let's assume if we have this here, and I don't know, let's draw maybe a wall. Let's say this is a 30 centimeter wall. Let's draw a simple one. So here, and then I'll multiply it, let's say, by every 60. And then if I open this in 3D, those are really high, so I can select them all, maybe drag them a little bit. Okay, and then using solid element operation, so I can select all the walls and use connect solid element operations. And let's say the walls are the, say, target in this case, and then the morph is the operator. And then let's say we'll subtract below, so we can go with down extrusion, execute, and then you can see, let's say, the walls now that we have this, whatever shapes that's based on that. Or we can do the other. So if we wanted this shell to be just a grid, maybe, so we add elements and we subtract them from it, so we'll end up with actually just a grid. Another really, really good object. It's a very old object. I'm not sure, maybe Georgia, Tent Maker, do you know who created it? Yeah, it's an old object that is available online, but it's really, really good object for these tasks also. So it's called Tent Maker. You can just download, just Google it. I can email it to you. It's free as far as I know. There is no limitation on using it. And if I open this, so basically with Tent Maker, I have option to go with 3 points or 4 points. So start with 4 points. You can adjust how it looks in the plan. So let's say, I want this here, I want this here, I want this curve to look like this, whatever. And then in 3D, you can start working on the points one by one. So, I want to move this up a little bit. I want this here and this curve to be up. So you can create, and you can control how smooth it is. So let's say I want it to be smoother. So I'll add points actually to it. So I can see now it's quite smooth. And let's say I will add another one here. I'll add another copy of it. And let's say this will be 3 points only. So I can just switch 3 points. And let's say I will match the curve in the plan. Yeah, and then again in 3D, I can just match the points. So this is here. This is up towards here, and so on. So, and again, you can use solid element operations with them. And I think it's really good object when we have shapes that we just want to deal with points. And you can turn off this marker here at the lower part. You can just say, I don't want to see the origin. So the origin and so on. And you can turn it to a morph also if you want and work on it. So I really encourage you, if you're into this kind of roofs or something, this is a really good object. The last thing I want to cover is sorry, is the shell. Also, shell tool has some really cool features. So let's start with basic couple of walls. So it's I just placed those so I can use them as a reference in my 3D easily. So just go 3D, and then with the shell tool, there's an option that is called the ruled shell, and we can go to detail. And this allows me to draw basically two curves or two shapes and connect them. So let's say I'll start on this surface, and I'll draw a basic maybe curve, but could be anything. Yeah. So let's say a curve up, and then done with it, and then select the second surface, and you can see I already have this line that allows me to draw any curve. So let's say, you see it curves the other way, let's say, and once it's done, then I have actually this shell with whatever we've created, and we can still edit it, and we can assign profiles to it. And this is not only in a horizontal. I mean, I can rotate this easily, so we can just go and rotate this vertical, so we can work on it as a vertical element. Or let me just show you actually if we create a closed one, let's say in the plan. So I can just go, sorry. So let's go with this on the plan actually. So I'll draw maybe a basic box as a button, and then it'll ask me the height. Let's say it's 8 meters, and then I start drawing the top part. So let's say the top part is a curve, then I don't know, straight bits. And if I select this, go to 3D, so I have the shape. Now what can I do with it is if I click here, for example, give me option to, let's say if I want to stretch it up a little bit, or I want to move this, the upper projection here, so I can just move it here. If I want to edit this, so I want this edge now to be curved. See, whatever we do, and or I don't want it to be actually on this plane. I want it to be a little bit more rotated. So we can do this, and whatever we do here, let's just move it a little bit, and I'll change the settings of this to be projected, let's say, only, and then I can actually start seeing. So I'm moving in floors, and you see, for example, per floor how it looks and so on. So that's also a good tool when you have shapes that are not very regular. You can also utilize it. Actually, that's it for before the break. If you have any questions.
This one you have shown us is on
No, that was. Oh, it's very old, actually. That is. Tent Maker is very old, but the shell, I think it was. No, it's very old. Shell? No, it's. No, before. I think 14 or something. I cannot recall, but it's quite old. Maybe 16, maybe. I know. But yeah, so basically, you see, that's the point. I mean, that's why I said it's like bits and pieces of things that I want to show you that maybe you're not aware that's in software. So I hope I'm helping you to explore it at least. So okay, let's have a quick break. Let's get back by 12 maybe, so we can hopefully wrap the whole thing up before 1. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My question is, like, if we have a polyline in 3D, like, assume a pipe moving in, like, we connect it center of that line, or maybe the end.
You can. I guess what saying you can, but
extrusion is
that you can, but it's better to use obviously because those are actual elements, not just the shape.
even if,
Shows that Article 15.
15, huh? Okay.
15, 2001.
remember once I asked for the dome, the onion dome,
15.
which is small size.
Hello.
يلا بعدين كان كل شيء بسرعه
لانه مشان
انا موجود
راح يكون مسجل، هذا مسجل راح نبعته. لا راح ابعت لينك راح نسجل.
عشان اشرح
Remember the doom?
not really.
I'd send you again. I was unable to do it.
What was it?
It was a doom, but it was shape of an onion. You can see the onion block. It has
Oh,
segments.
but that's a profile. You don't need that. That's just a profile that you draw.
They couldn't do it. Honestly. Then
But
I
that
imported it from. I made it in AutoCAD.
you don't need any of that. That's just the profile, and then you rotate it. I can show you this, please.
You can have your.
It's really easy. That's
One quick question.
yes.
For example, we work in IRT with a base drawing. Base drawing basically from the architecture. Is there a way that if it is drawn in 2D, can we make it and convert it to a morph? That when we show in 3D, we see the lines like an imported.
Not to morph, but you can actually.
Like for example, we want to
Yeah, I
see
know
the
what you're
plan
saying. Yeah, you
on
can.
3D.
You
How
can.
do we do it?
I would say the easiest way is actually using it as a picture. So you apply-
Picture?
Yeah.
Because we tried file import. There's no JPEG. There's no DWG.
No. You just put the picture. So you can do two things. Either that actually you know the size, and that is would be printed. So if you know the size, you just apply it as a texture. So you create that as a texture with this size as a texture. Or there's a picture object actually. There's an object in library that's a picture. You can put it horizontal and apply that.
Okay, that's how we do it.
There is another way. There's also another way that actually you turn it to a format that's 2D line format and import it back. You can also do that, but I think it's for presentation purposes. So I would go with images actually.
Images.
Yeah.
So it's an object, but then the object shows a planet.
See the object. So you have in the library you have a picture object. So this let's say this is the new one. This is the new one, and you can make it horizontal,
Okay.
and you load a picture.
So basically, this is the drawing, the plan.
Yeah, and then just be sure of the size because this stretch with it. So just be sure of the size, and you're good to go.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
cheating options, they want options. They create sandwiches that will not. So they, if you want, for example, watch more, you can install the emotion. I installed it. You have all. So what do you have?
There is getting customer goals, getting customer changes.
Most of them, how many is there? 4 or 5 units?
Yeah, just the stairs, I think. Yes. You should also try to small to see if it's working on the keyboard. And if we do not see a problem, then we know when we at the end say it's not working. He doesn't ask for it. Right. So it's better we try also small computers. If this one, if it's a bit slow. Okay. If we can do it, if we can do it or not.
Yeah, actually, it's happening now. It's slow. It's slow in the bus computer. It's slow in.
See how much more it goes in that. If it's not able to work or not, but for sure, you have to start with new equipment. And that will talk about it now.
This simple thing that has been discussed in the earlier discussion. I mean, yeah, it's a time consuming that your salary will be consumed in this seminar, but it will happen. Because, like, we can teach this to them, but we don't have always the time. Always.
But you have to develop yourself.
Yeah.
I still can sit by myself and count the hours which I have worked on. The total duration is less than 1 week, but I have really actual work on the project. Or let's say maybe it's 2 weeks when I count all the hours. Yeah. But when I discuss with Alfonso, I find out any place he knows something about something. But when I come to you with this kind of, and this is what I face with many people that I see, don't check the thing, not others. Where I can see that they are not studying. I think so.
I mean, for the wall connections, not everybody knows this. Even Sarah doesn't know.
And I mean, I
If
see
they are,
by myself.
they can say it.
If I have a question, I can go to anybody in the office and ask them. Yeah, hold on. It's a conversation.
That takes, even if you want to hatch the whole for the you don't check or, I mean, for instance, you want to have something, and if you have more, and even if you notice using the top space, the space is not.
How old are you now? 50. You see, we are almost done. So we wait for you and the others. We have them and also we have to be very detailed. This is for the whole future.
You are here, so that you can easily absorb it.
Yeah.
Unlike when you're watching online, sometimes you're distracted. Yeah, yeah. Especially with that's what you showed. I didn't know.
If we had not done this for 3 years, or 4 years, 3 years ago. When I came to the office, I already did.
That's why you can't say it.
It's all different. You start slowly, first of all, you say, it's all interesting. If we have not done it, we lost already.
You know that you want yourself to do they need because we already finished final never actually submitted. They did submit. Now they're studying for
We said about administration. Few of them, was very nice.
we did already. We did already submitted already. But they have
Good that you remind me.
I was just thinking they need to if you submitted they need to approve it or check it.
They will check our qualification, especially on the deal of but it's very nice to feel this and see we have a jail card. It's not going there for it's perfect.
Next application. Once presentation. Imagine if we go into presentation. We're still at in our right? But I know that he's that's okay. The last point of using entrance because it's more organic
Yeah.
approach.
And lots of people trust for that. Okay.
Yeah, it's very
Okay, so we will start the second part. Before we start, I'll just read a couple of questions that we got online. One of them is asking if you want to reduce the number of polygons of an imported object. Well, it depends on the importing process, I would say. So one of the things, as you've seen in some of them, you can control the number of polygons. If not, then actually, I would suggest if you still have that object and you still want to reduce it, is convert it to morph, and well, you are working on it. I mean, so in some cases, I had like I don't know, a chair imported, and the chair has wheels, and those wheels were very very detailed. So I just removed the wheels and saved them again. So I mean, it's not an automatic thing, unless it's option when you import. So for example, when we are importing from Rhino or from an RFA file, you have a slider, but the others are not. in ArchiCAD. I'm not sure. Someone asked about the coordinates measurement were broken. I don't think that is a thing in 21 or 22. I never heard of it, but yeah. Okay, so we will continue with the second part. Okay, so we'll start with creating custom doors and windows. And actually that is applicable. I mean, the example that I will show is about doors, but that's applicable to doors, windows, curtain wall panels, all of these. Now, in many cases, people ask if they want to create custom doors. And in my experience, most of the time we're talking about creating custom panel, not a custom door. The difference between them, basically ArchiCAD, comes with a very heavy, not heavy as in size, but I mean, it's very rich library that you have so many types of doors that are customizable and windows and so on. And in most of the cases, what we're looking at is just a panel to be applied. So here, this is an example where we have, doors, different types, and then we create a panel and we just assign it to a door. Versus creating a custom door. Creating custom door means that you create a door from scratch. So it could be, and that's very, very rare to happen unless you have a very weird shape, but otherwise, I would say the vast majority of times you're just looking at creating a custom panel. So we will cover both of these scenarios now quickly. So let's say we want to create a custom door panel, yeah? So that happens that we can start with lines, let's say. So I'll just create a basic, so 90 by 2 meters, 2.2, whatever. And it doesn't have, because it will adjust, as you can see now, it will adjust to the door. So you just have a basic proportion, but not necessarily the accurate one that you're going to use. And then we can use any tool to just get the model in 3D. It doesn't matter. We can use any tool. We can import. We can use morph, slabs. So for example, I'll just go with basic slab. So I'll just go to slabs, and I'll get a wooden slab, let's say, and let's say it's 3 centimeters, and I'll place it at 0. And yeah, okay, so we will place using magic wand. So I have this slab here. Now let's say also we will have some shape opening in it or something, a glass opening that looks like this. So I will select the slab. I'll select the slab tool, and again using magic wand, I'll just click, and we have that subtract. Now one thing before we carry on, you see here, for example, the number of points. Since we were talking about polygons and stuff, this is related to the magic wand settings. So here you can always check magic wand settings, and you can control when tracing, when applying magic wand, how small the divisions are. There are so many ways. So here, for example, I'll just make it a little bit bigger. So it's a 8. So here it says that it allows a curve, a deviation from the curve by 8 millimeters or something. So you can control that. So I'll just make this, and then if you see now, if I create it again, you see how less numbers and less points. So that is something, just for you to know that also it helps controlling the polygons and all of these issues. And let's add maybe glass to it. So let's say glass, and let's say glass is half, so 5 millimeters. And I will apply it here. So now if I check it in 3D, and let's say I'll place the glass a little bit inside. So let's say somewhere here. And again, it's not only 2D. We can have 3D elements popping out, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, as long as we model something in 3D. And once we're done, we basically just select it and go to libraries and objects, and you have an option that says save selection as. And in this case, we are saving a door leaf. So we're not saving a new door, we're just saving a door leaf. So what happens when I select door leaf? I'll continue and save, and I'll give it a name. So I'll call it door leaf 1, let's say. And it will be saved. Okay, now going back to the plan, we'll just place a wall. Yeah, and maybe we'll place the different door types. So if I go to the standard library, and let's pick different types of doors. So this is one. Let's say one with a double side, with side lights. One with, I don't know what other options. Let's say we'll take maybe a pocket door, and maybe like a folding door. So a few different types. Yeah. Now, if I go to 3D, and I hope you're all familiar with the options that we have with doors. That they're very powerful in terms of what we can achieve with it and so on. And one of the things is like they're all an actual interactive doors based on. So if this is a sliding, you slide and all of these things. But let's put them back. That actually, if I select this now in their settings, usually there's a door leaf option. So let's say if I go to door leaf and let's say I'll select horizontal vertical grid, you'll find that even with that you will have options. So I want this to be thicker on the lower part. I want a different number of grids. We can customize all of this. But then always we have an option that says custom. So when I select custom, it will show me a list of the ones that we've saved as custom door panels. And then I can assign it to that door, and it's still a functioning door, and we can stretch it. It's just a door with that whatever shape as a panel. And that applies to all door types. So I can select all of these, and I'll just go to custom, and again, I'll just select the example that we've created, and that's pretty much it. So, and that again works. I mean, I showed you for doors, but it works for handles, it works for windows, it works for curtain wall panels, it works for kitchen cabinet doors. All of these are something that you have custom, where we can just model something, save it, and it is part of this. So we're not creating a new object from scratch. We're just enhancing what we have. So I think that's a good thing to use with this. On the other hand, if we want to create a new door, so let's say we have a shape of a door that is irregular, whatever shape. So in that case, we need to create a new door. So let's say we will have a shape that looks like, I don't know, let's say it's an opening. So let's say this is the lower line, and then we have, let's say that is the opening. Now, I would hate you as an architect if you create anything like that, but let's assume that is the door. Yeah. So let's say this is the door. Again, the same thing. Let's say I'll pick maybe wood. So I'll apply this here as a slab. So I have wood, and maybe also it has some glass part or something in it. Sorry. Again, slab, create this, and then let's say we place glass. Yeah. So we have this. So let's say that's how the door looks like, or the opening, or whatever. Now I will save it actually with a mistake, so we can see the mistake, and then we see how to deal with it. So let's say I've created this, and then here I will save it in libraries and objects, and I'll save it as a door. Yeah. So we didn't save it as a door leaf this time. It's actually a door, and we call it whatever, new door. Okay. Now the problem with this is when we created it. So let's say we have this wall here, and let's say we pick door tool, and that is the new door that we just created. And now if we look at it in 3D, the problem is that the opening is not actually following the shape. It's like a full, what do you call it, like a full rectangle. So when you're creating an irregular shape, you just need to add one more step that actually tells ArchiCAD where is the boundary of the opening. So when I've created this, basically I can just add a new slab, or any shape actually doesn't matter, but covering the outline of what I want. So now if I go here, so I have added this big slab that is outlining also, and it has other parts, and it doesn't matter what material we are using, it doesn't matter. The one thing that you need to know that in their ID, for this specific slab that is outlining the shape of it, the ID of it should be wall hole. Okay, that works as a command that when we're saving it, as long as it says wall hole, it knows that when we insert it, it will follow this shape. So now if I save this wall hole and save it, so for example, if I just want an opening with no door, I will just add that slab and call it wall hole and then use it. So now again, I will save it again. So file, libraries and objects, and I'll save it again as a door, and we call it door 2. And now when we place it, it should be fine. So I'll just place it next to the previous one. Sorry. So this should be fine. It cuts through the door properly, the wall properly, and if we adjust it and so on, it works just fine. Now, again, enhancing it. So let's say yes, but I'm not happy with the, with the representation. It's an object like any other object, like what we did earlier with the object. So I can just go to opening the object here, and I can just go to 2D view. Sorry, I can just go to 2D symbol, and basically draw. If I wanted to be represented in specific, I'll just draw something very basic. I'll just draw, a line, and as if the whole thing is a door. So let's say this. Again, it doesn't make sense, but just I think for just showing an example, and then I'll delete, let's say, these here. Okay, so let's say this, or whatever you detail there, and that's pretty much it. You save it, and you have that as part of your door. And it's a door. Yeah, it doesn't have all the intelligence of all the other doors, but you can have tags, you can have whatever you want. Yeah. So that is mainly the difference between creating a custom panel that works, again, doors, windows, curtain walls, and so many other options. But I mean, everything that you can find custom, it's usually a custom panel that we apply. But then we can create also custom doors, like in this example. I will move to another topic. So do you have any questions about this? Yes?
So this custom door that we created, can it be open or just flat?
No, if you want to add that sort of intelligence to it, that actually you need to script it. So that's why I encourage you in these cases, just think of actually using the standard doors, because standard doors has a lot of options that you can actually customize to reach something, a combination. So if, I don't know, let's say I want to use a standard door, but also I want to add a profile around it, let's say, or something. So I would keep the door, but then I'll add a profile to it. So I'll use a combination to not lose, because the program doors, the ones that by default are really, really powerful. So I wouldn't sacrifice it unless it's like a shape, based shape or something. You can create doors, but I wouldn't. I mean, what I'm showing here is things that doesn't require any scripting. It's just, direct thing. Okay, we move to the next one. All right. So the next one is actually, again, it's a very common question among users. It's about when we have some sort of a pattern. We might have a decoration pattern, we might have a screen or something. So we'll see a couple of options on how to create them and how to maintain them, and maybe how to control also the polygon numbers also. So I'll start with the latest thing in 22, which is basically curtain wall. So if we had So if we open this elevation, so let's say we're talking about this sort of a pattern, yeah? So we'll start the first one. We create it using curtain wall. Yeah, we can create using curtain wall. So what I have is I have an empty curtain wall, and I have this as a just a trace reference. And I can start with edit. I can start applying the what do you call it, the frames. So I'll just start with this here. Yeah, let's say we created this, and I'll select these frames and maybe then rotate them. So just say rotate, and let's say we will have 11 copies, because I know this has 12. Okay, so you have these frames. Then let's just add, I think we can just do half of it. So I'm just adding these frames. I'm tracing, drawing, and obviously for that you need to have a, what do you call it, like a tileable that could be repeated, yeah? So you always look at that pattern when you're creating it. That's something that could be repeated. Maybe my pattern. Actually, no, my pattern is tested, but I think I'm having a really hard time to see it here on the floor plan, on the screen when I connect it. Let's finish it and then we clean it up if it's still needed. And that's the thing. If the pattern is not really properly tileable, you face these issues. So I'll just double check again what is the issue here. Anyways, I'm not going to really check it that thoroughly. So just accept that there's something with the pattern that I'm creating. So let's say we're roughly okay with it. So I can now maybe rotate these parts or mirror them. So accept these. Okay. All right, so let's wrap it up, even if it's not 100% accurate, it's fine. Okay. Let's say it's okay. I mean, I still have an issue here, but let's say that's fine. And we'll turn off this, or we can keep it. And you know, in 22, we have this option that we can look at the pattern, and we can start adjusting the pattern edges. Yeah, so I can just say, well, this is up to here, and the pattern should be again here, and then let's say from top, and you can see feedback of what you're doing. And then let's say apply, and we have, now obviously creating it with curtain wall has so many advantages because we can apply windows and different panels and so on to it. Yeah. So if I go to 3D, so I'll have this, and then if I want to change something in the settings, I don't know, I want this to be a window or glass or something, we can do this. But this has so many polygons. Now, in many cases, if it's just a decoration, if it's just a screen or something, maybe you don't want to create a 3D object out of it, but you want it to look fine in 3D, you want it to look in elevations and so on, but you don't want to do the whole thing. So this is the first option that we talked about where we can. Now, the second option is actually using images. So for that, we will use this image, for example. So basically what we have to do, but we have to utilize something called the alpha channel. Alpha channel, in images, we have channels. We have for colors, RGB, and then there is an alpha channel, which allows computer to know which parts to be transparent and which part to be solid. So I'll show you that. I'll switch actually to Photoshop, just show you how to prepare that image. So if I open, actually, I think that is the one. Okay, so that's the one. First of all, again, the image should be something that you can repeat. It's a tileable image. And by default, I'll delete now the alpha channel. So by default, any image has these RGB channels. Yeah, but I can create a new channel, and it is the alpha channel by default. Basically, alpha channel has black and white. Whatever is black will be transparent, and whatever is white will be basically solid. So I will start actually by creating. So here I'm working on the alpha channel. I'll paint it all white, and then I'll turn on the other channels, let's say, and basically what I will do is I'll select the areas where I want it to be transparent. Yeah, so I'll just say by color range, let's say select the blue. You can be very accurate about it, but I'm just showing a quick example. And now in the alpha channel, these parts to me should be black. Should be black, which means that these parts will be transparent in that image. So the image will be this, but everything in the alpha channel that is black will be transparent. So based on this, let's say, so that's the image, and I will save it. You need to save it in a format that actually carries the alpha channels with. So for example, in this case, TIF or TIFF, and you can save it. So we call it delete. PNG carries it. I think we have TIFF and PNG and PS. Maybe. Okay. Yeah. I mean, as long as ArchiCAD reads it and has alpha channels, we're okay. So I'll just go with that. So delete 3, let's say. And now in ArchiCAD, and by the way, that's very common in images. Like, it's not like you always have to create it. It's very common when you're downloading textures that it has actually alpha channels. So now we go to surfaces. And let's say I have this material here, and I'll create a new one. I'll just call it delete 1 or something. Now in the images, here in texture, I'll just add the one that, where is it? I think we call it this. So I just loaded it. And here you go. Now, let's keep. But here you can see it's not transparent. You see here that you select what is the effect of alpha channel. So if I click transparency, this becomes transparent. Yeah. And let's say the size of it now is 60. So that is 30. Okay. So let's say, okay, that is a texture that we call delete 1. We can give it a color if you want that reflects something. Let's say blue. And now, basically, if I draw a wall, so let's say I'll draw a wall that is very thin, 2 centimeters or something. And so this wall, I will use this surface. So I'll surface override and use delete. So this. And now you can see that this has actually the pattern, and it's just an image, yeah? So in this case, this will be just 6 polygons. So that is just a wall, but this is just a texture that is applied to it with transparency that we can use. So you don't need to model it. Now, again, it makes sense if it's an important part of your design that you need to model it and you need to document it, then it's fine. But if it's just a screen or this kind of thing, you can use it. Now, we will just carry on and enhance a little bit of things about it. So first of all, so we have this. But now, for example, let's say if I draw an elevation here, and let's say I'll have another wall here. And this wall will have a different material, yeah? So it'll have, let's say, let's say this. Now, if I open this elevation, let's hide this. And in settings of this elevation, or section in this case, let's say, okay. So if I apply vectorial hatching, you know, this will have it, but this, you know, or if you're inheriting one, it's showing a different pattern. That is also something that we can fix. So basically, what we have to do is, let's say I have the pattern here, but I know, if you remember, when we placed this image, the size is 60. So basically, this whole thing is 60 centimeters. Yeah. So I want to match also. I want this hatch to match it. So this is the hatch that I have. So I'll just drag a copy of it, and I want to rescale it to 60. So using resize, let's say this will be 60. So that is actually in scale, although we can adjust the scale after creating the hatch, but that's fine. So let's say I'll copy this, and in options, in the element attribute, sorry. Okay, in element attributes, we just go to fills, and I'll create a new fill, yeah? So maybe I'll pick one of the symbol fills, any, it doesn't matter really. Let's say this, and I will duplicate it, yeah? And I'll call it, again, let's call it delete 1 or something. And here, basically, I'll just paste that pattern. So now I have just created a new fill based on this pattern, and I'll just say OK. So first of all, before we carry on, I just want to show you that basically now it's a new fill that is called the delete that will have that pattern. And I can now assign it to a surface, exactly, in a surface. So I can go here, instead of having no hatch, I'll say assign this hatch to it. So now I know that I have this texture in 3D, and also that in an elevation, or was it a section? In a section elevation, I'll be able to see that as part of it. Yeah. So imagine if I have to model this in 3D, how many hundreds of thousands of polygons, or it's actually now it's just 6 polygons. And the last thing that you might consider in these cases that you might need to move this pattern or realign it or something. For that, you can use always the option that is sorry, I forgot where it is, so you can find it. It's Align 3D Texture. It's in Document Creative Imaging, Align 3D Texture. And then if I click Set Origin, it will allow me to, wherever I click, that point will be the origin of this pattern. Yeah, so we can, and that affects 2D and 3D. So I think this is a good, I mean, good tool, especially for these examples where it's just the shape, you don't want to overdo it and so on. It does actually. It does, yeah. It reads the transparency, yes. Let's try it actually. It's a good question. Let's try it. Rendering, obviously it works. And rendering, definitely it works. That's I'm sure of, but I was just checking 3D. Apparently it doesn't. Rendering, definitely it works. That's out of question. But no, if it's not working here, so it will not do that. But since actually you mentioned 3D, one thing to consider that when you're doing that in the surfaces, because what we did is we created this material and we edited it in whether it's in OpenGL or so on. But now if I render it, it will still read the old values. So just remember one thing before rendering, when you switch to Cine Render by Maxon, just you have an option that says update from basic. So that will carry on the same settings, and then you can have shadows and all of that. Okay, so that is. It's a wall. It's a wall. It's no. There's no parts of it. It's just a wall, and that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that you need to use this everywhere, but when it's not about the detail of it, it's a very simple thing, and but as I said, there's a screening on a facade or something that is not, or could be a hand. I mean, it's just a pattern that you don't need to include in your design, but you want it to show and you want to show properly, so maybe you can use that. Few small things that I will cover before we move to the last part. There's oh no, actually there's one major thing actually to show first is collision detection. So collision detection. Okay, so let's look at it here. So in this model, the one that I was showing you, we had just a quick what do you call it, MEP duct. Now, ArchiCAD comes with collision detection by default. Now, how does collision detection work? And it is in design collision detection, you'll find it. Basically, you identify two groups, and then you run them against each other. So in this example, if you're looking at MEP, for example, in the first one I said, check all 3Ds, that their classification is a branch of MEP element. So it doesn't matter. It's a bin, it's a, what do you call it, an equipment, it's a run, it's all. And run it against everything, in this case, except zones, that is not MEP. But you can run if you want specific elements versus, so I want to check columns versus slabs or something, we can specify this based on it, yeah? Yeah. I mean, you can, as long as you can specify a group. So you can say a group, the first one, as I said, let's say in a specific layer or a specific system against the other system, you can run that. It doesn't matter, as long as you can identify them as two groups. The other thing is we have tolerance. Now I'll set tolerance to, let's say, very small. I'll show you now the difference. Now, so when I run this check, it will go, I mean, this is basic, so it should be very quick. And it identified we have 4 collisions. And if I click continue, it will bring up the markup tool. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with markup tool, but markup tool is basically a tool, embedded tool, that we use as the name is suggesting, for marking up items. That basically allows us to select items, create, let's say, an entry, give them a color, and then we can keep track of them. So if it's a correction, if it's a communication, and so on. And the collision detection utilized this tool also for it. So based on it, it found 4 clashes. They're all in the first story. And I can, the moment I turn them on, I think you can see, for example, it is showing the elements. I can select it and say, well, select the elements involved in this collision. So it highlights them and so on. Now, a couple of things about this that I think are good to be familiar with. So let's say I'll just open the project here. Okay, so let's say I want to check this first clash. Yeah, so I select them, and then I select to zoom to them. So it zoomed in, but I might have some elements in the way. Yeah, so I'm not able to see it and so on. So I think a quick, good use is utilizing graphical override. So in graphical override, I can create, so in collision, let's say I created one rule that says everything is transparent and gray. So create all the elements, so see here, all the types are glass and they're gray. And if I activate this, what happens is that, I think I did activate, okay. So basically everything is gray except for the markups that I'm turning on. So it makes it very clear to see the issue. So you can just zoom in, see the issue. And that also works in plan. So let's say if I go back to the floor plan, I want to check them quickly. I can do the same thing. So except for the topic that I am highlighting, everything else is great. So it's a good tool to keep up with, to see, and so on. I will remove now these clashes, and I will run again the collision. No. But one thing to mention, I will change the tolerance. So basically what the tolerance does, we can either do it by volume or by surface. Basically that's a threshold. So if I say, any collision up to equals or bigger than this, list it. But let's say I'm not interested in very minor collisions. That's not the thing for me. So I can change that. So in this case, let's say I would say, I don't know, for surfaces, let's say 0.5 meter, don't consider it, and check again. So now, for example, I have 3 instead of 4. So one of them was in this range. So we can also, if we don't want to run the collision, because in some cases it gets crazy because everything, even if it's touching, so you can actually control it here too. So that is about collision detection. And again, it's not only for MEP versus ARC. You can run it with everything. You want to be sure that the furniture are not by mistake pushed into a wall or something. You can run it against it. So you can do all of these things. And then combining it, I think, with the graphical override is a good practice. Couple of more things that I want to show you, small things, but I think they're good to share. Sometimes we're working in 3D and we select elements, but we're not able to find them in 2D or the other way around or something. So I think a good practice. Let's turn off the shadows. So let's say for whatever reason in 3D I want these elements to be selected. Let's go maybe to the entrance. So let's say I want this side, this wall, this, let's say this, and I don't know, let's say, and this wall. For whatever reason, I want them to be selected. So it's hard to find them because they're different floors, and then I can find them here, but I can't find them in the floor plan or something. So you have in palettes a palette called selection, and you can add selections to that palette and name them. So I'll just create a new selection set, and I call it whatever, one set. Yeah. Now this is selected. I can go back to the plan, let's say, and I can activate this, and it will tell me because I have in different floors. I'm in the 2nd floor maybe or 1st floor, but I can select. So it will select them all although they're in different floors. And if I move them, if I change anything, it will change them all, even if they're in different floors. So that is good also when you're working in, let's say, let's go 3D. I don't know if you can. Yeah, so you can see that it moved that and so on. So this selection set is actually helpful, especially if there's items that you want to check, but you're not sure where they are and so on. That's a good thing. Another small thing that could be also helpful. So let's say we have a wall. So let's say a wall and then a column, or like a regular column, and a slab. And let's say we want, or a different kind of selection. And let's say we want to apply something to all of them. I want to change the layer of all of them. I want to change the structural function for all of them. Now, usually what happens if I select them all and go to settings, now whatever I change, you see what is highlighted is wall. Whatever I change will be only applicable to walls. So now if I change this layer to, I don't know, let's say hidden, yeah? So only the wall is affected, not the other ones. I have to do it again and again. To avoid that, if you have this kind of requirement, you can select them all, and you can use something called edit selection set, which is basically instead of Control-T, it's Control-Shift-T. And once you hit it, it will tell you like, okay, so you have selected these elements, and you can change these things for them. So all of them, I want them to change the layer, fine. I want to change the structural function for all of them, let it be. I want to change the classification for all of them, so all in one go instead of doing it per tool.
Are showing this 3D, the wall and slab and the column and make the hidden?
No, you should be able. No, you should be able to do. I don't see why you shouldn't. No, it works. It works. 2D, 3D doesn't matter.
No, not this one. Now I open the specification of the wall and make hidden. Maybe the wall and the slab also hidden.
No, the default one, because you're doing this just for this whatever tool. So whatever was last selected, usually we will be just applying it to that tool. Okay. One other small thing that I think also is helpful, that in ArchiCAD we have okay. So you know that when we draw elements, let's say when we draw a complex wall or slab or whatever, that we have the skins. They have different classifications. So maybe something is classified as not classification, sorry, just tagged as core and so on. And that we have the partial structure display. So if I move to without finishes, finishes are gone. If I go to core only, only the core of the element is shown and so on. Also, there's an option that says core of load-bearing element. So any element in ArchiCAD has something called structural function that we can say either that is load-bearing, non-load-bearing, or unidentified. So it is a good practice that actually you select the actual structural elements and assign them as load-bearing, because what that allows you to do is, so let's say I'm looking at this model here in 3D. And I can, I mean, without worrying about what layer, what tool, it doesn't matter. We can just switch to, let's say, core of load-bearing elements only, and I'll be able only to see, the structural elements that are assigned as structural elements. So all of these are actually assigned as so load-bearing element. Yeah, so we can do that. Now, also we can combine this as we did earlier with the. Let's do it. Actually, I don't have it ready, so let's do it. We can combine this if we want visually. So I can just go here and say, well, show the entire model. And in graphical override, so I can create one. Let's say we create to check structural okay, let's say structural check. Yeah, And I will add, the first rule that I will add is the one that I used earlier for the collision detection, because basically it says, everything is gray. I want that. So I want everything to be gray. But then I will add a new rule. So I'll just call it load bearing true, let's say. Then in this case, everything that is structural function is load bearing. Well, I want it to be, let's say, highlighted. I want it to be red, and I want it to have a hatch that is also, let's say, red, and also in 3D, I want it to have some color. Yeah. And then I will add this. Just be sure that's on top. Okay. So now I have the structural check, and if I activate it, I should be able to see now the whole model, where I can see the architectural elements, but they're transparent, they're all transparent, and then the structural element. And again, it could be not based on structure, it could be anything, yeah, anything you can think of. And that works in 2D, it works on 3D, again, the same thing. So if I activate this here.
These structural members, are they the original members like I sections, IP sections, or
Yeah.
it's only a physical representation?
No, no.
The quantities as well.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you can also, I mean, ArchiCAD has, sorry, let me just finish this and I'll show you in a second. That in plans, let's say, so we can have the same, same sort of relation. It has also, sorry, I want to mention that in ArchiCAD you have the, it has actually the standard steel library. I'm just trying to find where is it. I cannot remember. Yeah, here. So for example, you can import standard steel profile. It has in the library, and you can even import it here. So basically, based on the code, you can select and you import it. So yeah. So that's also, I think, is a good thing to. I mean, graphical override is very powerful. We will talk about, I think, more in documentation, but it's very powerful. You can do a lot of things. I think one more tiny thing is left to show you before we switch to stairs. That in some cases, we have an element. We draw an element, could be anything. But it's not in the correct floor. So maybe in 3D it is fine, but we dragged it, something we end up that actually the home story is wrong. So let's say I want, or not wrong, I want to force it to be considered another, maybe an element that is slightly below the level, but I want it to be considered also with that. Now, if I select an element and change, so let's say I will change the home story of this to, so instead of 2, I'll go to 1. And what will happen is it will jump down based on the relation to the floor. So this says, from floor, it's 0. So when I change this, it will jump down. Now, if I don't want this, I just want to relink it. I don't want to move that. Any element, we can just right-click, and there's an option that says relink home story. And the relinking home story means it will remain in its position. It's just associate with that. So now if I check the settings here, the home story is 1. It's not 2 anymore, but it didn't change the height and so on. So that is also, I think, I find handy. That's it for this topic. I'll move and show, I think, a couple of things about stairs and railings. So before we go there, I don't know, any questions so far? No, we're okay. Yes.
I'm not so versed in custom objects. I would like to know these custom objects, like doors or imported objects, can be used in the new instance of ArchiCAD.
Can be used?
Can I use it in a new instance of ArchiCAD? For example,
right.
I started from scratch.
Yeah.
And I want to use
and you have something already in a file. Yeah. Well, yes. See, for example, the ones that we've created. Now we're talking about new doors, yeah, not favorites. We're just talking about new doors. So whatever we created, you will find it in your. If you open the library manager, you will find it. Let's say in the embedded library, we will find the ones that I've created. So this is the door that I have created. This is the new leaf that I have created, and so on. Now, these are part of the file. But if I don't want them, if it's something I said I'll use it more often, I can export this out of the file. So I can select them. And here there's an option that says export. And then I can save them out and then reuse them in any other file. Yeah, so it's just library part that I load in other parts. Now, if it's an attribute, if it's a profile, a favorite, like for example, favorites, if it's a favorite that you have in a file, but you want to move it to another file, in favorites, you have an option to import and export. So again, you export and import directly. You don't need to export, actually. If it's an ArchiCAD file, you can just import your favorites directly from another ArchiCAD file. If it's an attribute, as in custom profiles or a custom pen set or something, you would use Attribute Manager. So in Attribute Manager, I can open another file here. Whatever, let's say this file, and then I can start importing. So I just select and append or index. So I move from one file to the other. It could be a profile, it could be anything. Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll move to the other example. So I'll try to cover just a couple of things about stairs and railings. I'll show two examples, and then I'll show a few small things. So the first example is creating such stair, that it's a stair, but also it incorporates some furniture. So basically, you know, I have the environment ready. I'll just pick stair tool, and let's say I'll draw a stair, and I will align it, let's say, with this end here. So let's say we have a stair. Now, once we have a stair, we can start editing the sub element. Yeah, so I can just select, let's say, this thread here. And I say, well, this should be extended here. This should be extended here. Let's say this is here, and let's say the last one extended here again. And then the threads also, I can, sorry, the risers, sorry, I can start, you know, adjusting them. And even we can create shapes. So if I want this to be, I don't know, curved, so I can just select and curve it a little bit. Or let's actually first stretch this and then we curve it. It'll be easier to control. So let's say we do this, and then we curve, let's say this, and then also this should be curved. Sorry. This should be curved with it. And let's say this part, oops. This part, I'll create a knot here, and then let's say stretch it all the way to the back. And then I can, maybe using solid element operation, I can clean this up. So I can go to solid element operation, use these as targets, and use the stair as operator, and execute. So, you know, I have this, and it's an actual stair that so you can control the steps and everything about it. But also, let's show, for example, if we want to add maybe railing. So in railing, maybe I'll select wired railing, and let's say I'll apply railing here. But I want to edit that, so I'll just select it. And I want this point, because I don't want the whole thing, so let's say I just want it to be up to here. And let's stretch this point back. This looks like I curved it. Just try one thing. Okay. Now, because this is live, is not working, so let's try it for one last time. Okay, we can stretch it back, but let's say that's as a start. What I wanted to show you basically is not this, is that you can also adjust, let's say, the ends of it. So if I want those to be horizontal, if I want to have one, let's say this, the extension, I want it to be like with a return, with a curve. First of all, I can stretch it. So if I want to stretch it, we can work on these elements separately, and then I can just say here, and then let's say if I want to put it back to the point that I want, and so on. So you really have a lot of options to work on it. Or let's say if you want, in this case, we will just place one to the wall. So in this case, let's say I'll just place it here, and by default, let's say it's pushed up. First of all, I noticed that it should be flipped. So this should be on the inside. So I'll just use the flip railing on reference line. So it is flipped, and then I can start editing it. So I can just go to settings, and in segments, let's say I'll start removing the rails. So many rails here, so I'll just remove them. Okay, and then maybe the top rail, we will remove it, and also the posts. Let's say we don't want inner post, and maybe even the let's keep it actually for now and see how it looks. So let's say okay, and but let's say also I don't want these posts, so I can select them and turn them to none. Let's say so there's no posts, and let's say we want to add fixing for this to the wall, so I can just go to settings. And in settings, I will find a fixing option, and I'll say, I want the plate, I want the details. You can control all the details here. And then how the distribution. So let's say I want to distribute it by a number. So I want 6 or 8 or whatever. And, it goes with the fixing. And again, the same thing, we can control these handrails and so on. So we can control all of these in it. So I think it's, it's a small thing, but just show how powerful this tool and the options that we can do with it. So that is one quick example of editing maybe sub-elements and so on. Another example is about creating custom threads or custom stairs. So this is a stair that's creating with Morph. So we'll see how we create that. So we started with a basic stair, and basically I can just go to edit. And sorry, just to clarify, this stair in settings, so it doesn't have a structure. Yeah? So there's no structure required. There's just the threads and, well, actually just threads because there's no risers. Yeah. So we have this shape. And then let's say we go to edit, and I can select this, let's say as a start, and I can convert it to a morph. Now, when I convert it to a morph, it's not part of the stair anymore. So it's just a morph. Yeah. And I can start working on it. So I can, let's say, using whatever I think we showed earlier, you can do this, and let's say I want this to be, actually, okay. So let's say up to here, and then if I want an edge to be curved, maybe we can use. So it's a normal command for for the morph. So we also maybe do the same thing here. Whatever shape. Now, once we are done, we can select this and save it as a, again, libraries and objects, save selection as, and we will save it as a thread. So here, stair thread, yeah. And so give it a name, test, we call it, and no, let's try it again. Well, there's a step missing because when it's changed, I mean, it's not getting saved. I'm not sure why, but when you save it, it'll just ask you for direction. We'll try it again now. I think we'll just open a new file. But basically what happens after that, so I can delete this. And what happens after that is if I select, because now we don't have this here, yeah? So I can turn on the thread, and I will have it saved here. So I have those steps saved already, so I can just selecting them, yeah? So this is the first one. So let's assume that each one of them, actually we've created it, and we have saved it individually, because those are not repetitive. So I'll just apply them here one by one. So that is 3, that is 4. You see 4, for example, is connecting with the upper one. So this is 4, and this is 5, and this is 6, and so on. So we're almost done. So this is 7, and this is 8. So those were saved earlier. Yeah. So basically now this is one stair where we have these shapes, and maybe with a little bit of working on the details, like adding railing and so on, we can have that. And you can have a look maybe at the sheet. So that is, you know, the stair, how we create, and it's actually a stair. It's not just a morph, it's actual stair that follows the concept and so on. Now another thing. So basically what I want to show is you can create custom threads. It doesn't matter what's the shape, and you can apply it to that. Another quick thing related to it, so I'll just start a new file. So also related to stairs, let's draw a, you know, very basic stair. Doesn't matter. So it's just one thing to show that actually stairs. I hope you're familiar with actually creating stairs, that you set the rules and you can control the heights and so on. But after that, so if I open a section, and in some cases we have, I mean, in some cases we have one step that has a different height, and we can also adjust this. So if we want, obviously, if you don't want to kill the people going up and down the stairs, don't do it, but you can. I want to highlight that you can do this, so you can do this one by one. The other thing that I also wanted to highlight is Sajid actually asked recently if he has, you know, he wanted to have a specific profile, not empty. He wanted to have some hatching or some, you know, concrete or something below it. You can using actually, I think one. So you can, first of all, you can use that, the thread, custom thread, but the custom thread will not adjust to the stairs, like the size, the shape. But what you can use instead, you can use.
But in that case, I would modify the starter and the ending threads and values. I have to make separate profile for the starter and the terminal creating.
Right.
No.
No.
The problem was when I'm creating a section, or for some section it looks okay, but if you see that in elevation or from side view, it shows the material in the side view as well.
No, just then force this side.
With someone.
Override the sides, you should be fine. But anyway, so let me then cover that. So the first method that we showed is creating a whole step with the design, but you can also create a profile. So you can just in Profile Manager, let's say, I think there is one that we can use. Yeah, this is reasonable, I think. So you can draw a profile for your design. So you can, I know, let's say if I have this, and then I'll add a different, you know, different material below it, or a different design. You want a groove in the stair. You want. Yeah, so let's say this, or you have a specific shape. It has a groove at one point. You know, any shape that you can think of. And basically, once we save that, then you can assign it to the stair. So if I go back to the stair, obviously I would recommend that you start actually from the stair section, but it's okay. You can go here, let's maybe go to settings, and or actually you can just directly go here to threads, and then here thread you can just select the profile, and whatever you have as a profile you can use. So I'll just use this, and that for the ones that I didn't adjust, I mean I need to adjust it. So whatever detail that we have applied here is actually applicable, and you can work it on. Now regarding your questions, let's check actually.
Shows from the side view, shows the very.
Yeah, let's check. I think you can. You should be able to override it. So let's say this. Oh yeah, you can override it. So you can override. So that's also you know, a good thing that you're not limited. You can actually create whatever profile that you want and assign it to it. I think that's pretty much actually what I wanted to share with you today. Yeah, I think that's it. Any questions so far? That yeah, we're good. Okay, well then I hope you found this helpful, even for heavy users, you know, that are using ArchiCAD daily. I hope you still found something that you can benefit from. And again, thank you for coming, and we'll let you know about the next workshop that is about presentations. We will hopefully within next month, but we will let you know. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one last thing, this is recorded and it will be sent to you. Yeah, so the whole thing is recorded, and I will email it to you once it's up.